had to deal with the loss of a loved one in your life, whether it was a parent, a child, a husband or a wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, close friend of yours? In life, that's one of the toughest things that you're going to deal with is the emotional pain of losing someone so close to you that you can no longer talk to and no longer be in contact with and hang out with and have someone that loves you unconditionally. It's so hard to lose someone that you care about. I want to share with you a personal story from my life. I lost my mom at the age of 26. I was 26. She wasn't 26, but I felt like that was pretty young for me to lose my mom in my life. And some of you watching this, maybe you've lost a parent when you were even younger than that. And I'm sorry, because I truly know how hard it is. If you've ever lost a loved one, go with me for a minute. Have you ever had them appear to you in your dreams? I've had so many dreams since my mom passed away, and it's been roughly like 6 years, a little over 6 years since she's passed away. She appears in my dreams from time to time. It's a trip because I always feel like the dream feels so real. In a way, it makes me sad that it's not real, but in my dream, it feels so real when it happens. In my dreams, I always say to my mom, like, "Mom, what are you doing here? Like, shouldn't you be in the hospital? Like, what are you doing?" And it always feels so real, and it's crazy to me because I've literally had her appear in my dreams dozens of times. And I don't know about for you, but when someone that was close to you, such as a parent, you have certain memories that go back to your childhood. Do you ever experience a certain smell that just takes you back to a certain moment in your childhood? You know, for me, sometimes I might be walking through a department store and a certain perfume just takes me back to being in my mom's bathroom and she's getting ready, and just the smell of her perfume. Or this might sound kind of funny, but I still distinctively remember the smell of the public swimming pool, just the smell of sunblock and just maybe chlorine in the water, but just the public swimming pool smell. When I was a young child in the summer, we would occasionally go to like the local high school public swimming pool, and that's where everyone would go. And I remember you weren't supposed to bring food in, and I just remember one time that my mom had snuck in some Ritz crackers, and I thought, oh man, she's so sly. I thought that was so cool that she did that. And I said, "Mom, we're not supposed to bring food in." But I was so happy that she did, and I thought she was so cool in that moment. And sometimes I might be somewhere and just the smell of like sunblock or just people around a pool or maybe at the beach, and it just reminds me and takes me back to my childhood memory of thinking about my mom. And I'm sure that whoever it is that you've lost in your life, there's certain memories that you go back to, whether it's the taste of a meal that reminds you of a meal that your mom used to make, or a place that you used to go with that special someone who you've lost in your life. And there's so many stories that you have that take you back when you think about that person's life and the connection that you had with them. And for me, with being with my mom, oh man, there's just so many stories after stories of things that I recollect and I think back on. And I was thinking about a time when I was really young, around 7 years old. And if you've seen some of my other videos where I've talked into detail about some great things that my parents did for me, such as one of my favorite memories was the baseball birthday that I had. And in that video, I encouraged you to call up whoever it was that made that special memory for you and to thank them for that. And I encourage you to always be constantly reaching out and never hesitating, even if a relationship has kind of gone south with a close family member or someone who did very special things for you in your past or your childhood. I always encourage you to not to hesitate to contact that person and thank them, tell them that you love them, because I tell you what, time flies by. I was thinking about a memory from my childhood when I was about 7 years old or so. My dad had got me a skateboard, and it's like, yeah, skateboard. It's so cool, right? When you're young and you first get to experiment with something new, such as a skateboard. Granted, it wasn't a hoverboard. We didn't have hoverboards back then. Last time I checked, they don't have real hoverboards yet today either, but it was a skateboard. And the bearings, you have like the wheels on a skateboard, and you have the bearings that hold the wheel connected to the board. And it was a kind of a faulty skateboard. The bearings came loose, and what happened when the bearings came loose, wheels come apart on a skateboard. And I'm like zipping downhill at that age, thinking I'm going really fast at 7 years old. The wheels start to come off, the bearings come loose. I do a nasty face plant, and at that age, I had never experienced any kind of physical pain as bad as that. I had blood just like gushing, running out of my nose. My lip was all banged up and bloody, and it just felt like my face felt like broken. And at that age, oh man, pain is magnified. And I tell you what, I had never bled that much in my life up to that point. Come to think of it, that might be the most I've ever bled in one incident in my entire life at age 7. I had blood gushing out. My face is laying in the sidewalk, like in the concrete sidewalk, face down, obviously crying. And that moment when you're a child, you feel so helpless and kind of alone, thinking like, man, I'm out here skateboarding, like who's gonna help me, And before you know it, I see my mom come running out of our house, the first home that I grew up in as a child. And I just felt so like, how did my mom know? It was almost like when Jesus walked on water, I see my mom just like all of a sudden come towards me from so far away. And it's almost like moms can sense when their child is hurt. They can be like miles away, but a mom can sense when her child is hurt. And I just felt like I needed that love. When you're a child and you hurt yourself, and in this case, it was really bad, and I'm bleeding, feels like a broken nose, just feels like maybe I lost my nose, feels like a broken face. And there was my mom, though, to help me and comfort me, and to grab me and to hold me, make me feel more comforted, and obviously to give me the medical attention that I needed. But it's times like that you look back and it's just like, I had a mom that in those moments was there for me and loved me. You're going to be hard pressed to find anyone in your lifetime that loves you unconditionally and nurtures you the way that your mother did, or hopefully the way that your mother continues to do. If you're blessed enough to have a mother that's still alive, one other story that I wanted to share about talking about my mom was in my young adult life. I was a waiter when I was younger, and I waited on this woman who I hadn't seen since my young childhood. She used to babysit my brother and I when we were really young, and this is my mom was still alive at the time, and we got to talking and reminiscing, and I had forgotten all about this because this is like when I was 5 years old, and I barely remembered any of this time when she used to babysit my brother and I. And she said to me when she was talking about, oh, you were always such a cute little kid, and kind of make me feel good. But then she said about my mom, she started to say, oh, your mom was so sweet, and your mom was always so glamorous, and I wanted to be just like your mom when I was younger. And I kind of thought, wow, because I never thought I looked at my mom in that angle or that aspect before, being her son and when I was younger. But to hear someone else tell me that they wanted to be like my mom when they were a young teenage girl, and how they thought my mom was glamorous, and it just made me feel like, wow, my mom was glamorous. That's cool. That's good to know. And sometimes you don't see your parent in that light, and you don't realize it or look at them that way. But I tell you, I pray and hope that you are blessed to have a great mother figure or a great father figure, or that you still do have loving parents. Because I tell you, as my life from that point, that story I just told in my young adult life, just within a couple years after that, I'll never forget, where I was, what I was doing when I first heard my mom got really sick, and I was selling advertising. And this was before Mad Men was cool, and I was still pretty young at the time. And I remember closing probably about the biggest sales deal that I'd ever done in my young adult life. I remember the feeling of being so like, yeah, and you go in there and the feeling of when you close a big deal, especially when you're young and you hadn't closed that many big deals, but it was a really hard deal to get. And I remember the feeling of just feeling on top of the world when I got out of there. But it was at that same moment that I got news that I knew that my mom was going to be passing away soon. So I went from being on that really high feeling of just closing a really big business deal to about collapsing once I got in the elevator, because it was like once I left that meeting, I got news about my mom's condition and that it really wasn't something curable. And I just remember that moment like someone just like punched me like right in the stomach, and you just feel like you're just so sad. You want to like, it's a feeling like no other. And I'm sorry if you've experienced it. My mom would spend the next few months of her life in the hospital, and it's so hard to see someone that you love so much go out in such a harsh way as living the end of their life in the hospital or hospice care. But the one benefit to that is that for those of you who have lost someone in a car accident, you didn't get a chance to say like a final goodbye. I'm truly sorry that you didn't get to experience that. But no matter how you lose a close loved one to you, it's going to be hard no matter what. If you never get a chance to say goodbye, I'm sorry. At the same time, if you lose a loved one very close to you and they have to endure some suffering in the hospital the last few months of their life, and you visit them every day, it's so hard for everyone. And that's what had happened. My mom was in the hospital, and they kind of warned me after the first couple months that she was in the hospital. It got to where they get you on certain medicine and certain things where it starts to change who you are. In my case, it started to change who my mom was, where she couldn't no longer really function normally, and she couldn't talk all the way good in the hospital. And there was a time I remember that I thought that she was gonna pass away, because I just felt like she was getting really bad in the hospital. And I'll never forget when I walked out of her hospital room and I called a relative of mine out of state to call her to let her know that I thought my mom was gonna be passing away soon. And I started getting choked up on the phone, and I just about lost it. I almost could barely tell her at the time. And what I did, and I don't know if you've ever done this, but if you've lost someone or you're experiencing what I was experiencing of seeing my mom go through that in the hospital, and I could no longer conversate with her or talk to her because she was kind of somewhere else. All the things that they had her on, it started to change her after being in the hospital for a few months. And I don't know if you've ever done this, but I would call her voicemail, because on her voicemail she sounded so healthy and happy. And in that moment, that's why I would call her voicemail, because I didn't like to see her suffering in the hospital. So if I had called her voicemail, she sounded so healthy and happy, and it gave me some relief. And I don't know, that might sound kind of lame. I don't know if you've ever done that when you lost someone or you saw someone that you really cared about suffering, and you wanted to still hear and imagine them being healthy and happy. So those were some tough moments for me when I saw my mom suffering in the hospital. And what I did was I prayed to God, please take her out of this pain that she's in. And I prayed that, I didn't get to talk or conversate with her like I once did in the hospital because the things that they had her on, she could no longer conversate anymore, and she couldn't speak. She would try to speak, but it would come out kind of like gibberish. And I tell you what, when I prayed to God, that God, please, I know at this point I wasn't praying for healing, because I was just praying for where I knew she was going to be going to, and I was ready for her to leave this earth soon. I didn't want her to go through any more pain. I tell you what, God in all of his glory, what he did was all of a sudden the next day, she could speak again. And granted, she hadn't been able to speak for quite some time in the hospital. And I got to conversate with her again. And I never thought I would get the opportunity to talk with her again. And not that I needed any more closure in me and my mom's life together in our relationship, but it was so amazing that I got to talk to her again. And I knew that she was going soon, and instead of just sitting around and mourning, I liked to try to joke around with her. And there was some male nurses in the intensive care unit, and I would tell them, hey, she was a cheerleader in the Super Bowl, and my mom would say, he doesn't care to hear about that, but I was still enjoying getting to mess around and joke with her, because she was a cheerleader at one time in the Super Bowl when they had it at the Rose Bowl many, many years ago. Everyone was young once, but I would joke around and say those things, and I never would have got the chance to do that had she never been able to speak again. And it was like God gave me an extra week with my mom, and it was in the intensive care. It wasn't the best place of all places to hang out, but I got a chance to still reminisce and talk to her more and joke around about things like that, and conversate and kind of mess with her like that. And I remember the night my mom passed away, it was really crazy. It was the night of the Obama inauguration, and there was this big event going on TV, biggest presidential inauguration ever, and here my mom's heartbeat was getting down to where it was constantly getting slower and slower and slower, to where she barely had a heartbeat left. And I remember standing around her with my brother and my stepdad and praying over her and kissing her and telling her, Mom, I love you, Mom, and Mom, you're always so proud of me. I told her, I said, but I'm proud of you, Mom. And that moment, and she was such a great mom and such a fighter. And I remember after she passed away, the craziest thing, it started to rain literally after she passed away. Kid you not. It was almost like, in a way at first, I almost felt like God was crying. But at the same time, I'll tell you, this is what happened after she passed away, and eventually I left the intensive care unit. We went outside, and it was me, my brother, my stepdad, my mom's best friend from her life, and her husband, who was a pastor, and he was very close. They were always so close to the family, and he was almost like a mentor figure to me in my life, when I'm blessed to have him in my life, and her, my mom's best friend, and her daughter, who I was always really good friends with as well. And we got in a prayer circle, and it's raining outside, and we're praying. And I said when it first rained, when she passed away, because it was, I kid you not, it was not raining when she saw a heartbeat, and it was after she passed away, it started raining outside. And I said at first I felt like it was God crying, but then when I was praying in a circle outside, I felt such a relief, because I knew where she was, and I felt like the rain was God's way of letting me know it's okay. It's gonna be okay. And man, it's the craziest feeling when you leave a hospital and your mom passed away. And this is the person whose human body I came out of. She gave birth to me, and she's no longer present. Her spirit, her soul has moved on. She's getting a new body, but it's a trip, because it makes you realize just how precious life is. You'll know people who pass away, and maybe when you're younger, you might lose a grandparent and it affects you, but not as much as when you lose your actual mother or father. And that really, when I left there, I wanted to let friends of mine know, and I sent out some text messages, and I'll never forget, it was late at night, but I just wanted to text people, hey, my mom went to go be with Jesus. My mom went to go be in heaven, and I got such a great love outpouring of text messages, and my grandpa, my dad's dad, who's still alive, I'll never forget, he called me. It was late at night, and he got the text, and even though it was late, I didn't think that he would call because it was so late, but my grandpa wanted to show that he cared. And I get all these text messages, and one of the text messages that I got that I really liked was the verse, "To die is gain," because truly to die is gain, because you're going to your eternal home, and that's comforting. But I got another text message from a friend of mine, and he was very poetic, and he didn't just give the generic, "Hey, I'm sorry to hear that, your mom really loved you." It wasn't just anything, a basic text message. He said something very profound and poetic, and he said, "You will meet again, but when you do, you will be a man amongst men. Your true journey begins now." And I was like, whoa, that's a pretty profound, powerful text message. I didn't expect that, but it kind of also gave me a sense of peace and assurance, encouragement from a friend. You're going to be okay. Your journey starts now. You're going to meet her again. You're going to see her again. And when you do, you're going to have a lot more stories to tell, because you're going to be a man amongst men. And I just thought, whoa, that's pretty powerful. Before my mom had passed away, some of her last days, I had asked her, "Mom, what do you think about when you're in the hospital?" Because when you're in the hospital, you have so much time to just think about life and just reflect on things. You don't always have visitors there that can be with you all the time. And what she said to me was, "I think about you and your brother. I pray for you and your brother." And I thought, wow, that's a mom right there. She's in the hospital in her last days. She's suffering. I'm asking her what she's thinking about when she has time alone, just sitting in a hospital room, in a hospital bed. She's not watching TV. People have watched enough TV in their lifetime. These are her last days. She's not watching TV. And in all of her pain and her suffering, she's telling me, "I think about you and your brother, and I pray for you and your brother." And I just thought, man, Mom, that's a mom right there, And I think about God being our Heavenly Father, and I just think, when a mom loves you unconditionally, you have a Heavenly Father who loves you unconditionally. And when Jesus hung on the cross, and all of his pain and all of his suffering, he prayed for you. And when my mom was in the hospital and all of her pain and suffering, she said that she was praying for me and my brother. And I just thought, wow, Mom, I love you, Mom, And when I just think about life, my advice for you is that life comes and goes so quick. Make your life count. And if you want to truly honor your mother and father, honor them in how you live your life. If you ever have anyone that ever tells you, "Boy, your mom must have raised you right," what they're doing is they're complimenting you because of the great person that you are. So the way you live your life, you honor your mother and father the way you live your life. It's also the same, the way, if you want to honor God, you want to love God, you honor God in the way that you live your life. He says, "If you love me, you will keep my commands." So you want to honor your mother and father, you want to honor God, do it by the way that you live your life. Make your life count. Make your life have impact. Don't be someone who at the end of your life feels like you could have done more. I once knew a man, he was a police officer. He was on his deathbed, and he was saying, "I could have done more." I mean, the man did amazing things in his life, but he felt like he could have done so much more. Don't leave it out there on the table in your life. Don't feel like you could have done more. Live your life with a purpose and have an impact on God's kingdom in the way that you live your life here on earth. My mom had a huge impact in her life. So much of an impact on me and my brother. But before she met my dad, sure, maybe they ended up getting divorced, but my dad got baptized after he met my mom. And the same thing with my stepdad. He got baptized after he met my mom. And he's doing amazing things for God's kingdom. So you see, she had both of her men, and they'll be macho men. They'll tell you, "Oh, I was already headed in that direction," and they might come up with other excuses and say it wasn't all because of her. But bottom line, both my dad and my stepdad both got baptized after they met my mom. So what does that say about the impact that she had on them? The way you live your life, have impact. Live your life to honor God and do work for God's kingdom. Believe me, I know at times your mom can drive you crazy. It's what moms do, especially when you get into your adult life. Your mom might drive you crazy at times. But please always honor your mother and father and love them no matter how crazy they might drive you. Because I tell you what, your mother and your father, no matter what they've done, no matter how crazy they've driven you at times in your life, they love you unconditionally. So live your life honoring your mother and father. And just like God loves you unconditionally, live your life to honor God and live your life with a purpose, loving others and having impact for God's kingdom for eternity. I tell you, once you realize if you're going to end up on your deathbed someday, don't wait until you get to that point in life to realize that life is all about personal relationships. The sooner that you realize that life is all about personal relationships, the sooner you have wisdom. The way you live your life, loving others, having impact on others, having impact on God's kingdom for eternity, living a life of purpose, the sooner that you truly get it. So I hope with this story that I shared with you about the impact and the love that my mom had on me, and just how quickly this lifetime on earth can come and go, I hope that I would encourage you to seize the moment, to seize the opportunity in your life to have impact and purpose in your lifetime, to be the person that God has always called you to be, and to live the life that God has always called you to live. Your journey may just be beginning, but I hope in your lifetime that you serve God and live life having a purpose and knowing that we're just coming and going in this lifetime. So as much as we can love others and have impact, that's truly what it's all about, to be the person that God has called you to be.
To see more purposeful videos, make sure to subscribe to our channel, and please like us on Facebook to stay connected.